You know, the world's climate scientists tell us that the highest safe level of emissions would be around 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We're already at 400. They tell us that the sort of safest we could hope to do without having perilous implications as far as drought, famine, human conflict, major species extinction would be about a 2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. We're rapidly approaching that, and with all the built-in carbon dioxide that's already in the atmosphere, we're easily going to exceed that. So on our watch, we are facing the next major extinction of species on the Earth that we haven't seen since the time of the dinosaurs disappearing. You know, when whole countries go underwater because of sea level rise, when whole countries find that there's so much drought that they can't feed their population, and as a result they need to desperately migrate to another country or invade another country. I mean, we're going to have climate wars in the future.
And what about livestock and animal agriculture?
Well, what about it? I mean,
My name's Kip. This is me. I had a cliche U.S. American childhood. My mom was a teacher, my dad was in the military, and I have one sister. I played all the sports growing up, but I always loved the outdoors and camping. Life was simple, not a care in the world. And then this guy showed up. Like so many of us, I saw his film An Inconvenient Truth about the impacts of global warming, and it scared the emojis out of me. In Al Gore's film, he describes how our Earth is in peril. Climate change stands to affect all life on this planet. From monster storms, raging wildfires, record droughts, ice caps melting, acidification of the oceans, to entire countries going underwater. That could all be caused by humans' demands on the Earth. With scientists warning unless we take drastic measures to correct our environmental footprint, our time on this planet may be limited to only 50 more years. I wanted to do everything I could to help. I made up my mind right then and there to change how I lived and to do whatever I possibly could to find a way for all of us to live together, in balance with the planet sustainably forever. I started to do all the things Al told us to do. I became an OCE, Obsessive Compulsive Environmentalist. I separated the trash and recycling. I composted, changed all the light bulbs, took short showers, turned the water off when I brushed my teeth, turned off lights when leaving a room, and rode my bike instead of driving everywhere. But as the years went by, it seemed as if things were getting worse. I had to wonder, with all the continuing ecological crisis facing the planet, even if every single one of us adopted these conservation habits, was this really going to be enough to save the world? It just seemed that there was something more to the story. I thought I was doing everything I could to help the planet. But then, with one friend's post, everything changed. The post sent me to a report online published by the United Nations stating that cows produce more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. This means that raising cattle produces more greenhouse gases than all cars, trucks, trains, boats, planes combined, 13% compared to 18% for livestock. This is because cows produce a substantial amount of methane from their digestive process. Methane gas from livestock is 25 to 100 times more destructive than carbon dioxide from vehicles. Here, I'd been riding my bike everywhere to help reduce emissions, but it turns out there's more to climate change than just fossil fuels. I started doing more research. The UN, along with other agencies, reported that not only did livestock play a major role in global warming, it is also the leading cause of resource consumption and environmental degradation destroying the planet today. How is it possible I wasn't aware of this? I thought this information would be plastered everywhere in the environmental community. I went to the nation's largest environmental organizations' websites, 350.org, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, Climate Reality, Rainforest Action Network, Amazon Watch, and was shocked to see they had virtually nothing on animal agriculture. What was going on? Why would they not have this information on there? It seemed the main focus for many of these groups was natural gas and oil production, with fracking being the latest hot issue due to water usage and contamination. Hydraulic fracturing for natural gas uses an incredible amount of water. A staggering 100 billion gallons of water is used every year in the United States. But when I compared this with animal agriculture, raising livestock just in the US consumes 34 trillion gallons of water. And it turns out the methane emissions from both industries are nearly equal. Living in California, a state plagued by drought and water shortages, water use is a major concern for many of us.
The average Californian uses about 1,500 gallons per person per day. About half of that is related to the consumption of meat and dairy products. So meat and dairy products are incredibly water intensive, in part because the animals are using very water intensive grains. That's what they eat. And so all of the water embedded in the grain and that the animal eats essentially is considered part of the virtual water footprint of that product.
I found out that 1/4 pound hamburger requires over 660 gallons of water to produce. Here I've been taking these short showers trying to save water, and to find out just eating one hamburger is the equivalent of showering 2 entire months. So much attention is given to lowering our home water use, yet domestic water use is only 5% of what is consumed in the US versus 55% for animal agriculture. That's because it takes upwards of 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. I went on the government's Department of Water Resources Save Our Water campaign, where it outlines behavior changes to help conserve our water, like using low-flow shower heads, efficient toilets, water-saving appliances, and fix leaky faucets and sprinkler heads, but nothing about animal agriculture. When I added up all the government's recommendations, I was saving 47 gallons a day. But still, that's not even close to the 660 gallons of water for just one burger. I wanted to see if I could somehow talk with the government about this. Just calling to see if we could schedule an interview.
Yeah, that would be good. What does your schedule look like this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon?
Tomorrow afternoon could be good.
For the urban environment, there are a lot of things that can be done. Indoor, using low-flow shower heads, low-flow faucets, efficient toilets, efficient water using appliances. All those are really good areas that can help quite a lot. But the biggest water savings is from outdoor.
We have to be mindful of the way we use water. We have to use it as efficiently as possible. We have to protect its quality, and we have to be good stewards of the environment that depend on water.
And checking the sprinklers. A lot of time we get a lot of leaks and broken sprinklers and things like that wastes water. And those are the areas that there's a lot of room for conservation.
It kept on coming up. A lot was of animal agriculture. Can you comment on that at all, about how much that plays a role in water consumption and pollution?
That's not my area.
There's one study that found that 1 pound of beef, 2,500 gallons of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eggs is 477 gallons of water, and cheese almost 900 gallons. I mean, I guess it's one simple, why isn't it on Save Our Water? Just, it's kind of like if you went to someone's house and my neighbor has a faucet, dripping, and then you see this giant hose turn full blast until 660 gallons of water are shooting out into the street, flooding the entire street. I think I would say, hey, turn that off, please. It seems like it's a huge thing that we could be doing by far more than anything else. Just like, if that is really the case.
I think that the water footprint of animal husbandry is greater than other activities. There's no ifs, and, or buts about it.
That would be really powerful, just rather than waiting till we're in a drought. What do you think about just starting now, and whoever's in charge of the Save Our Water, hey, let's start encouraging people to eat less meat now, because these studies are coming out.
I don't think that'll happen.
Why?
I don't think that'll happen.
Why?
Because of the way government is set up here.
That's interesting, though. Why though?
One is water management, and the other one is behavior change.
Behavior of taking showers and not watering your lawn and doing all that, that's behavior.
Yeah.
Wow. Clearly the government did not want to talk about this issue. Their inability to answer, along with the environmental organization's silence on the topic of animal agriculture, made it seem something more was going on. I started doing more investigating on the impacts of livestock and found out the situation was actually worse than I had thought. In 2009, 2 advisors from the World Bank released an analysis on human-induced greenhouse gases, finding that animal agriculture was responsible not for 18%, as the UN stated, but was actually 51% of all greenhouse gases. 51%. Yet all we hear about is burning fossil fuels. This devastating figure is due to clear-cutting rainforests for grazing, respiration, and all the waste animals produce. This makes animal agriculture the #1 contributor to human-caused climate change. But not only that, I found out raising animals for food consumes 1/3 of all the planet's fresh water, occupies up to 45% of the Earth's land, is responsible for up to 91% of Amazon destruction, is a leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, and habitat destruction. Yet, the world's largest environmental groups that are supposed to be saving our world didn't mention this anywhere. I had to speak with environmental organizations to find out why they weren't addressing this issue. I sent off dozens of emails, made call after call, spent hours on hold. Days became weeks and weeks became months, and for some reason, no one wanted to talk to me about this. So bizarre. I supported these organizations for so long and now was met with silence. I was, however, able to connect with a handful of environmental authors and advocates that were willing to address this issue. I took my old trusty van, Super Blue, out of retirement and hit the road.
So my calculations are that without using any gas or oil or fuel ever again from this day forward, that we would still exceed our maximum carbon equivalent greenhouse gas emissions, the 565 gigatons, by the year 2030, without the electricity sector even, or energy sector even factored in the equation, all simply by raising and eating livestock.
If you reduce the amount of methane emissions, the level in the atmosphere goes down fairly quickly and within decades, as opposed to CO2. If you reduce the emissions to the atmosphere, you don't really see a signal in the atmosphere for 100 years or so.
The single largest contributor to every known environmental ill known to humankind: deforestation, land use, water scarcity, the destabilization of communities, world hunger. The list doesn't stop. It's an environmental disaster that's being ignored by the very people who should be championing.
Free-living animals made up, 10,000 years ago, made up 99% of the biomass. And human beings, we only made up 1% of the biomass. Today, only 10,000 years later, which is really just a fraction of time, we human beings and the animals that we own as property make up 98% of the biomass. And wild, free-living animals make up only 2%. We've basically completely stolen the world, the earth, from free-living animals to use for ourselves and our cows and pigs and chickens and factory farmed fish. And the oceans have been even more devastated.
Concerned researchers of the loss of species agree that the primary cause of loss of species on our Earth that we're witnessing is due to overgrazing and habitat loss from livestock production on land and by overfishing, which I call fishing, in our oceans.
And we're in the middle of the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years. The rainforest is being cut down at the rate of an acre per second. And the driving force behind all of this is animal agriculture, cutting down the forest to graze animals and to grow soybeans, genetically engineered soybeans to feed to the cows and pigs and chickens and factory farmed fish.
91% of the loss of rainforest in the Amazon area thus far to date, 91% that's been destroyed is due to raising livestock.
The leading cause of environmental destruction is animal agriculture.
I just couldn't understand why the world's largest environmental organizations were not addressing this when their entire mission is to help protect the environment.
But that's the thing too, is they say, use less coal, ride your bike. What about, eat less meat?
Yeah. I think they focus grouped it and it's a political loser. In terms of, because they're membership organizations, a lot of them. They're looking to maximize the number of people making contributions, and if they get identified as being anti-meat or challenging people on their everyday habits, that's something that's so dear to people that it will hurt with their fundraising.
They do not want to address the primary driving cause of environmental devastation, which is animal agriculture, because they're businesses and they want to make sure that they have a reliable source of funding.
I went invited to a meeting with Al Gore and some years ago now, and made these methane arguments, and he was really pushed back. And that's just his argument. It's hard enough to get people to think about CO2. Don't confuse them.
I think that the problem with a lot of organizations that are focused and have a laser focus don't go off message because they don't want to piss off another whole group of people that will make their lives difficult.
If you listen to the majority of the major environmental organizations, they're not telling you to do much besides live your life the way you've been living it, but change a light bulb from time to time, drive less, use less plastic, recycle more. It's better for their fundraising and better for their profile to create a victim and perpetrator sort of plot line.
It's like when we talk about the fact that when we have a dysfunctional family and the father is an alcoholic, that's the one thing no one talks about. Everybody goes around that, and yet it's the one thing that's causing the devastation in the relationships in the family, because no one wants to talk about it.
How could these organizations not know? I mean, the issue is right in front of them. It's unmistakable at this point. And just like these organizations, they're falling over themselves to show the general public that climate change is human-caused. And in doing so, they completely fail to see what's right in front of them, that animal agriculture, raising and killing animals for food, is really what's killing the planet.
That was it. No more emails, no more phone calls. I had enough. I realized if I wanted answers, I would have to go to these organizations' headquarters in person.
Hi, how's it going? We're doing a full-length feature documentary, and it's on sustainability and animal agriculture plays a role. And we're seeing if we can talk to David Barr.
Barr?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have an appointment with him?
We've been trying for it's almost 2 months, and we haven't even had one receptive email or anything. So we're seeing if we can just set something up.
Let me just
They sent out their PR person instead. She refused to be filmed and told us to turn off the camera, but promised someone from their rainforest, ocean, and climate change departments would all speak with us, finally. Next stop was to give Sierra Club a visit. Turns out they were a bit more receptive to me showing up at their doorstep.
Hey, how's it going? With the climate change, what's the leading cause of that?
Well, it's basically burning too many fossil fuels. So coal, natural gas, oil, tar sands, oil shale, all these new exotic fuels that are kind of hybrids between them. But that's basically what is loading up the atmosphere. So we have this greenhouse effect where the heat is getting trapped and the temperatures are soaring at a rate that has never existed in the history of the Earth.
And what about livestock and animal agriculture?
Well, what about it? I mean,
do it just research. A couple of the UN report says it's more. Livestock accounts for more than all transportation put together. A recent 2009 World Watch report, livestock causes 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, well, it is a big issue, and we need to address that as well. But, there's just so many different potential sources of methane and carbon emissions.
If the number one leading cause is animal agriculture and meat consumption, then doesn't that need to be the number one focus, if not the number two?
Well, That's your assessment. Our assessment is different.
That was bizarre.
So Greenpeace got back to me today and said, "It was great to meet with you yesterday. I've spoken with various people here at Greenpeace about your request, but I'm afraid we're not going to be able to help this time. Thanks again, and we wish you the best of luck."
Greenpeace's response reminded me of the statistic that 116,000 pounds of farm animal excrement is produced every second in the United States alone. That is enough waste per year to cover every square foot of San Francisco, New York City, Tokyo, Paris, New Delhi, Berlin, Hong Kong, London, Rio de Janeiro, Delaware, Bali, Costa Rica, and Denmark combined.
Livestock operations on land has caused created more than 500 nitrogen-flooded dead zones around the world in our oceans, comprise more than 95,000 square miles of areas completely devoid of life. So any meaningful discussion about the state of our oceans has to always begin by frank discussions about land-based animal agriculture, which is not what our conservation groups, Oceana being the largest one in the world right now, the most influential, as well as others, that's not what is at the apex of their discussions.
I went on my favorite ocean protection organization's website, Surfrider Foundation, to see what they were doing about this. Mostly what I found were campaigns about plastic bags and trash, but nothing about animal agriculture.
What is the number one coastal water quality issue polluter?
I mean, a lot of it, it's actually, we call it the toxic cocktail, because it really is this sort of diffuse source. So it's, heavy metal from tires and brakes and cars, heavy metals. It is these herbicides and pesticides